Hey folks, how you doing? This is the Bronx Paladin from the Universal Order Show. I wanted to spend some time and talk about how the show will now be on Monday nights after 7 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, the show doesn't have an actual timeline because people's availabilities are different. Next Monday, we have Argonaut that is willingly sitting down for a chat. I look forward to that. That'll be next Monday, the 17th, at approximately 9:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern. So, wanted to talk a little bit about myself here. I play Zeldoris, the Paladin. I am currently the guild leader of Universal Order. We are on Ravenhold, a raiding guild. We, when the content is new, we raid 3 days a week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. Now, to get into a little bit of history, when I first started online gaming, I played a simultronics game called Dragon Realms. And on there, I was a ranger known as Harome Nibinoichi. Now, Nibinoichi means one half, and Harome, I was led to believe, meant either a form of quest, like either quest or to go on a journey, something like that. Don't really know if that's what it truly means, but that's what I went with. So in that game, it was an all text game, and the role playing in that game was very much emphasized because that's all you had were words. There were no pictures, no graphics. There was a light amount of ASCII graphics, uh, but that was pretty much it. You had to read everything, use your imagination, and type everything out. One day, I had lent an associate of mine my account so that he could try it out. And after a week or two, he played it for a bit and decided he didn't like it. Now, the character he had made had a name that I thought was pretty decent, and that's where Zeldoris Domanan comes from. In that game, if you were one of the early people to play the game, you could have a first and last name. I don't remember when, but they eventually stopped allowing people to use last names. So thankfully, this was during that time. And I don't know, something about the name just really struck a chord with me. So, like, you know what? I like that. I'm going to use it. Eventually, I moved on to Final Fantasy XI. Now, during that time, World of Warcraft was relatively in its infancy. And a lot of people from Dragon Realms were going to try out World of Warcraft. I really didn't have much of an interest, but I wanted to give Final Fantasy a try. So, on and off, I would take a peek at the game. My father played it at the time, and this was, during its infancy, so it was during Classic. And just to look at it, I made a character on his account. Every now and then, I would play. I was a Night Elf warrior, and I named him Harome. And in Dragon Realms, you could the crafting was far more involved. Where in games these days, you click a button, you make the item. Back then, if you wanted to say actually forge a weapon, you're talking hours of work, where you would have to mix together your own ingots, mix the metal, uh, the carbon dust, everything. Wait for wait for it to actually, melt and make the item. Then you have to cool the metal, and then you can begin actually pounding it. And it was, we're talking hours of real life time just to make a single item. It was ridiculous. So in that game, I used to make a lot of shields out of leather. You go out, you kill the animal, you skin it, like alligators, for example, and you clean the hide, you tan it, you wait an hour or whatever for the hide to actually be cured, and then you can work with it. It was an extremely involved process. I noticed that protection warriors actually use shields. So that's what I played because I wanted to use a shield. So leveling in the base game of Warcraft as protection was just a little painful in a very long time. I want to say I made it to maybe 25, around the mid 20s before I just couldn't do it no more. But again, I was involved with Final Fantasy 11 at the time. So I gave that game about maybe 2 years. My favorite class at the time was a blue mage. I just absolutely adore them. So one day, I believe it was the Super Bowl, they said that they were going to premiere a commercial for the first Warcraft expansion. I go to check it out, and it was about Illidan. Now, I played for at least a solid year Warcraft 3. And as anybody who's ever played that or any competitive game, it's competition really brings out a side of you that's mm, you either love it or hate it. And I am not a competitive person, but I still played it. I enjoyed it, and I started with humans. Eventually, started using the elves, and just played a lot of the side games that the community had created. But either way, I did play and finish Reign of Chaos. I enjoyed the Illidan character, the story, and definitely enjoyed it. The story in the Frozen Throne. So when I saw the commercial about him, I was like, "Oh man, okay, now I gotta play." And that's when I decided to stop 11 and focus on Warcraft. So I bought my own copy of the game, made my own account. The first character I made was a Draenei Hunter. Again, Alliance. I wanted to see what that was about. And for anybody who's played a hunter, they know that it used to be far more complicated than it is now. You pick your role and you're done. Back then, you had to worry about actually feeding your pet and feeding it the right thing. It was definitely a heartache. But I played it for a little bit, saw the intro, and was like, yeah, okay, that's nice. But it wasn't my true love. So eventually, I decided to make a paladin to see how that would be. And one of the things I've always loved as a kid and growing up was knights, the medieval time, the fantasy of it, swords and shields, and all the cliche stuff. And that's when I decided to make Zildoris the Paladin. And I remember the first 20 levels when you're doing the intro in Silvermoon. And eventually, I believe, Tranquil, the Ghostlands, whatever. I remember the entire time just yelling at my father, "You see this crap? I can kill things easily. I can heal myself. Look at this. I already have a gold in my pocket." Gold was, going from playing in the base game to this, where you're getting coppers for a quest to getting now all of a sudden getting silver and grinding to the point where it's like, I actually have a gold coin. Oh my god. It was definitely an experience. And I just kept rolling with it. And so eventually made max level, was doing some dungeons, joined some random guild for leveling purposes. And I didn't really communicate much with anybody because, leveling guilds, typically people are on, they come and go a lot. It's like, all right, well, now I'm done leveling. I'm going to look for an actual guild. There weren't really many perks back in the day, I don't think, uh, to keep people in a guild. I mean, other than obviously once you have a group established, you're raiding, questing, dungeons, whatever the case may be. So eventually it was time for me to find something. So I don't quite remember how I got into the guild, but as you may have heard in the past from some of our other uh, guests, I was in a guild under the guild leader Menace. Now, we went into Karazhan, and I did everything I could to prepare myself. I did my own attunement quest. I, you know, made sure that I had the best that I could get. I remember, I can't remember the name of the dungeon, but there was a dungeon, uh, Mechanar, maybe? I could be wrong about that, where the final boss had a one-handed sword called the Sun Eater. I cannot fathom how many times I ran that dungeon to get that sword. It was, well, yeah, it blew my mind. And of course, back then, dungeons were, they weren't something that you just do on a coffee break. You were involved once you started these things. You were there for like an hour. You had to go about it carefully. You didn't just mass pull the whole place. You pull more than one pull back then, you're dead. You're pressing the release button. So I got that situated and was finally ready to go and learn what raiding was about. Now, as is the case with some guilds, as I'm sure anybody has gone through, people, you got your cliques, your community, your favorites, whatever the case may be. And Menace, I can't remember the name of the tank, but he, of course, had his favorite, his main tank, and I was just, the off tank. So no matter how much work I put into raiding, into bettering myself, I was always just the off tank. And so he always had the lion's share of equipment. So somebody else that was in the guild at the time, Black Omen, who played a warlock, and I believe his girlfriend, Ophidian, I don't know what happened, but eventually there was a falling out, and they went to go make their own guild, and they asked me to come and help out, and I decided, you know what, I think it's my turn to go in there and show them what I can actually do. And I remember being extremely competitive with the system. Now, warriors were basically the gods of tanking back then. You wanted your tank to be a warrior. There was just no way around it. So, as a paladin, I brought like a little bit of utility, but that was it. I worked as hard as I could to try to figure out how I can squeeze out just a tiny bit more so I can somehow be beyond the expected peak of my class. I remember at the time I was a blacksmith and a miner. And then I dropped mining just so I can level enchanting for the sole purpose of enchanting my own rings just to give me a little bit more stats. I remember respecking my talent tree a gazillion times just so I can figure out a way to squeeze out a couple more points where I'm not only surviving, but I'm doing that much more damage just to show that, look, I got my space here. I'm working just as hard as everybody else. It was work. And then I remember spending, I don't know how much time, gathering up all the materials and all the gear required to build the nature resistance set for the first boss in Serpentine Caverns. Now, back in the day, Serpentine Caverns and Tempest Keep, people, many guilds used to go there, skip the first encounter just to go to what they referred to as the Loot Pinata. It's been way too long, so I can't remember their names. But I know that Tempest Keep had a Void Reaver boss that, for all I know, that's his name. But it was a giant robot. And then in Serpentine Caverns, people would skip the first boss because they were too lazy to get the elemental resistant gear and go straight to the underwater boss that you fish up because it was much easier. And I didn't want that. I didn't want us to skip encounters. I wanted everything legit, by the book, go down the line, knock everybody out. And that stubbornness, for the most part, played off. We did these encounters, we did it legit, we made our effort, we did everything in order. I remember also the first 25-man raid was Gru's Lair. And the first encounter of that fight was High King Mulgar. And we must have went through about 2 or 3 mages, and they just couldn't do it or didn't want to do it, where the encounter needed a mage to actually tank one of the bosses. It was a council fight where you had like 5 bosses, or 4. It's been a while. But one of them needed to be tanked by a mage for mechanical reasons. And so many were unwilling to do it. They wanted to play something else. So, me being the stubborn little twit that I am, actually leveled a mage, poured my heart and soul into it, gathered up every possible green item with stamina on it, so that I could freaking do it. And since Warcraft doesn't have 2 names, my mage was named Dominan. So just a fair warning to the couple people watching, I have a lot of old man stories. And what do old people do? We talk and we put the youngins to sleep. So if you're going to stay, get comfortable, lend me your ear. And I got so many stories, I might even make a series out of this. So one of the interesting things, and I'm sure we've all been there, there's always that one thing, that one piece of equipment that you, no matter what, you just can't get. Now, eventually we did get another mage that was willing to do the job, and so I was able to go back to regular tanking. Now, the High King Mulgar fight, I believed, dropped the shoulder token for tier 4. It took me, I think, or no, did he drop? I think he dropped both shoulder, and then where did the shield come from? It might have been that fight too. It took me 11 months to get that token, either from it just not dropping or me always rolling lower than everybody else. And then it took 13 months for me to get my first raid shield. And the reason why it took that long is because that was about when Zul'Aman came out. And so I finally had a place to get a shield. It never ceased to amaze me how long it took for me to get certain things. But yeah, Zul'Aman, that's got some stories about that place. And that's where the origin of the Druid hatred comes from. Zul'Aman. But to go in order a little bit, Karazhan, since Karazhan was a 10-man raid, and every raid after that was 25, with the exception of Zul'Aman being the second 10-man raid, for the most part, we were splitting into groups to go to Karazhan, get tiny little missing pieces here and there so that we would have more of a chance in Serpentine and Tempest Keep. So we cleared a few in both of them, and then Zul'Aman came out and we were going after that. We never finished either Tempest Keepers or Serpentine, so we never did the attunement quest to go into Mount Hyjal or the Black Temple. So we was really hoping that we can get some things from Zul'Aman to help us out, since that was a side raid. But I think it had, for the most part, comparable gear to the level that we had, just of a different stat allocation. So we go to Zul'Aman, we do some work there. Eventually, our lack of progress was starting to anger Black Omen. And he decided, to make a very long story short on that end, he was going to quit and go play a Warhammer game. He was really into that. I don't know which one. It could have been 40K, Warhammer Marines, whatever. There's a bunch of them out there. So all of us that were left in the guild, which by the way was named Elegy, they wanted to continue, but they did not want to under his name because they felt, for whatever reason, that any success we would have while still in that guild, even if we changed leadership, was just going to give him the success. I was like, fine, whatever. So they all wanted a new guild. But since I was the one that was trying to take care of people at the time while Black Omen was doing his thing, they wanted me to lead it. Well, okay, I never really led a team or anything before. I was like, fine, I'll wing it. I mean, these are a bunch of people that I knew, friends, whatever, so I'll, sure, give it a shot. And we're all trying to think of a name, and then I just come up with Universal Order. They all liked it, signed the charter, and that is the intro to the Universal Order Guild. Many, many years ago. So, Universal Order is now over 13 years old because we have stubborn people. We are all stubborn bastards. And we love each other, and we love this game, and Blizzard needs to stop making us wait a year for content. Give us a small, tiny raid with one boss in it like Hallion. Just something to tide us over for a month or two. We don't need a raid to have 50 bosses in it if it means we have to wait 2 years for another 20 boss raid. Give us filler. We like filler. I do hope that Universal Order sticks together, whether it be here or elsewhere, because to me it is way more than a name. It is a family, plain and simple. So before I leave for the night, I will leave you with the Druid story. So it's been, for many, many, many years, a joke in the guild that I hate Druids, and I do. In Zulamon, we the first encounter. Well, okay, you can choose which path you go. So if you enter the raid and go right, one of the bosses was a bear or a troll who turns into a bear. Now, we had done this boss before. Something happened. It was getting out of control. Maybe people were using ults. Maybe I did a whole bunch of stupid things. Playing a paladin was not easy back then. But no excuses. Something happened and I died. Thankfully, the boss was close to death. I'm not talking like 1 or 2%. I'm talking like maybe 10%. So, our beautiful druid healer at the time, again, I stressed the word healer, pressed a button to turn into a bear and taunt the boss and tank it for the rest of the fight. I could not contain my frustration at how embarrassing it was for a healer to just press a button and then tank. The healer, obviously proud of themselves for doing what they did, and the only thing I can remember about that night was just exploding. Like, these effing druids, they get to just press buttons and shift around, and I think for like 10 minutes I just lost it. I don't remember what I said. It was very long ago. But I completely lost it that night. And that's where it started. And since that day, there's been so many things that a player has done that's using a druid that just sets me off in a rage. Just whether it's dumb luck or something they do. Now, of course, if you do something like this healer did, that's just amazing and skillful and saves the raid and all that, I mean, yes, you get your respect, your props. But so many times it's been a druid that's shown me up, and I'm just like, that. And for anybody who's played the Burning Crusade, in Arena, druids were nigh unkillable. A druid healer can time you out very easily. So it was very frustrating. But hey, that's life. That's what happens. And yeah, F druids. All of you. Alright, folks. So thank you for humoring this old man for a little bit. Once again, next Monday, the 17th, we will have Argonauts as a guest. I very much look forward to that. It'll be sometime after 9:30 Eastern. I look forward to the experience, and I hope all of you do too. Thank you for your time, and until next time.